Well, probably most of us saw the shocking images yesterday of the attempted assassination of President Trump at a rally in Pennsylvania. Somehow, on Saturday, US time, a 20-year-old Pennsylvania man was able to access a roof with a gun just 128 metres from the stage where former President Donald Trump was speaking. Sadly, a father of two was killed defending his family from the gunfire. Michael Geer is the founding president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Family Institute. It's an organisation similar to Family First here in New Zealand, and I'll be joining with Michael next week in Washington, D.C. for a conference with other family policy groups. But today we speak to him about the events in his home state and the response. Well, joining me is Michael Geer, who is the founding president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Michael, good to connect again. We will be in a week also. But obviously the news yesterday from just down the road from you, about 200 miles or so, is pretty concerning. Yeah. And you actually have a family connection or have had family history in that area, Michael. Can you tell us a bit about the community there and the people there?
Yeah, so probably listeners there in New Zealand might be familiar with the town of Pittsburgh, and the town of Butler, where the rally took place, is just about 45 minutes north of the city of Pittsburgh. My wife, Susan, grew up just about 30 minutes west of Butler, Pennsylvania, where the rally took place and where the attempted assassination of President Trump took place. Butler, Pennsylvania is kind of a combo industrial, declining industrial as well as agricultural area, a very sort of salt of the earth. And if you were looking at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as we call it, the state of Pennsylvania, and sort of thinking about where is Trump country, well, Butler County, Pennsylvania would be right in the heart of what would be called Trump country, which is why they had a massive rally back there in 2020. President Trump was, President Trump was in Butler, and again, a very large rally that took place, but was ended so abruptly with the shots that rang out.
And is Pennsylvania considered quite a swing state, or is it blue, red? Which one?
Well, it is very much a swing state as far as presidential elections go, especially just in these last couple of election cycles, 16, 20, 20, and this year as well. It was 2016. It was really Pennsylvania when it went across the finish line for Donald Trump was the state that ended up putting him over the top in terms of the electoral college here in the United States of America. The president is not really elected by the popular vote, although the popular vote plays a role, but it's state by state in terms of what are called electoral delegates, as part of what's called the electoral college, and they're the ones that ultimately elect the president. And it was the electoral votes from Pennsylvania, the simple number coming from our state, which I think was 19 at the time, put him over the top in terms of the numbers that he needed. We are very much a swing state in 2020. 2020, it famously went for President Biden, but not after a lengthy overnight count. We adopted back in 2019 mail-in voting, which is something and early voting in Pennsylvania, which had not taken place before. In 2016, the count was done that night because it was same-day voting, but now we allow weeks of voting leading into the election cycle as well. So Pennsylvania is very much in the mix in terms of one of the key swing states, including Michigan, Wisconsin, etc.
So, Michael, I know you weren't there, and I guess you could say fortunately, but were you surprised when the news broke?
I was actually, my wife and I had just gotten off an airplane in Atlanta, Georgia, coming from an event, and she had just turned on her cell phone and saw the text saying that President Trump may have been shot. There was a lot of sort of unclear information coming out first. The AP reported there were loud noises and the president fell. And people who were there quickly knew that was gunfire ringing out. And, sadly, there was the wonderful, heroic man who ended up losing his life, Corey Comparatore, from that area, about firefighter from that area, lost his life defending his own family, jumping over his daughter to protect her, as any father, I think, would do.
Yeah, yeah, incredible example. But in terms of the temperature or the heat or the narrative that's been happening in US politics, were you surprised?
In that regard, there have been people who've suggested, famously, I think Tucker Carlson a few months ago said,
Yeah.
the way the rhetoric is going in this country, he wouldn't be surprised at all if there was an attempt on the president or the former president's life. And, it was just a few millimeters, really, that was the difference between a life and death in that circumstance.
Mm.
And so the rhetoric, there are many, I guess, on the left that have been calling Trump Hitler and saying if he took power, even the president, an official sort of tweet from President Biden, said that Trump would be a dictator on day one and that democracy was at risk, that it would be the end of our democracy. And, to use terms like Hitler, etc., are the kinds of things that raise the political rhetoric. And, with the condolences that have been offered, which are rightful, and the the care and the prayers that have been lifted up from some of those same people that previously had said he was like Hitler, you kind of wonder, well, wait a minute, why do you want him to recover if you think he was going to be like Hitler? And so those are the kinds of questions that are being asked, and there are a lot of people who are saying, let's lower the political temperature. Whether that happens, I'm not sure. Advertisements and things that the Biden administration plan to run this coming week in the Republican National Convention on buses and televisions have been pulled. And I think because they recognized, they were kind of over the top. And there have been, the president himself has said, Biden said, I'd like to take Trump behind the gymnasium and beat him up. And others said he needs to be punched in the face. And a political operative, a Republican political operative who really despises Trump, said, we need to put a bullet in him back in 2023. That kind of rhetoric does not belong in political discourse anywhere, and certainly not here in the United States of America.
Could you argue that the rhetoric has been coming from both sides, do you think?
Certainly there's examples of it on both sides. There's no question about it, but I think, again, using those terms like equating someone with Hitler and using the sort of fear mongering of suggesting that the end of the American system was at hand, if Donald Trump was elected president again, there's no basis for coming to that conclusion. And the riots that took place in 2020, the Antifa riots, all of those sorts of things coming much heavily more from the left, I think there is a lot of blame. Even, the magazine New Republic, a left-wing magazine, had a picture on their latest edition, the latest edition of the magazine that had Trump photoshopped to look like Hitler.
Yeah.
That is not the kind of thing that we typically see from the conservative or right side of the equation.
No. And look, for our New Zealand audience watching, many of these images that you've referred to or quotes I've seen for myself, so they are completely real, but the New Zealand media are hiding those from us. Michael, what impact has this had, or will it have, on the next months leading up to the presidential election?
Well, number one is we're encouraging people here in Pennsylvania, and certainly would ask people in New Zealand, to be praying for both the safety of the candidates, but really for the United States of America. We have been, at least in our view as Americans, a beacon of freedom and hope over decades, if not centuries, here in the world. And, I live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, a state that was renowned for religious liberty, founded on that purpose. Immigrants from Europe, from Switzerland, from Germany, fleeing religious persecution, specifically came to Pennsylvania. And our Commonwealth and then our nation were really founded on those principles of liberty, of free speech, of religious freedom, the right to life, and those things are all under attack. And so prayers are certainly in order, and certainly something that we would want, because those are being challenged. It's the kind of work that you're involved in there in New Zealand, the kind of work we're involved here in Pennsylvania and our colleagues around the nation to preserve those liberties that are gifts from God, and to know that they're under attack means that we need to be praying, but then also to be engaged. We're really encouraging people to pray, to vote, and to engage. Where we see things going between now and election time in November, it's hard to say. I think security is obviously going to be beefed up. President Trump is very much known, Donald Trump is known for the massive rallies that he has done. That's not been the case for Joe Biden the way he's campaigned, partly because of his physical limitations. Whether or not they're going to continue to have these big rallies is a question mark, and that will perhaps impinge upon the elections. But also, how the news media covers all of this will be a question mark as well. The institutions in our society have been severely damaged in terms of trustworthiness, whether it's the way the news media reports things, as you just said, if and they're in New Zealand, if they're hiding things from the people, that's not the role of the news media. It shouldn't be hiding things from people. We should be exposing the truth and letting people make decisions for themselves. And so whether it's the institutions of government, whether we trust the FBI or the Secret Service in terms of doing a full-blown investigation as to what happened here, or whether the media is going to report it effectively and correctly, are question marks that people have. And that's where social media and things even like podcasts and some of the other social media outposts, if you will, provide opportunity for people to find some alternative views, if you will, or some truthful views sometimes when the news media is not doing its job.
Yeah, well, you actually answered my next question, which was what is the Pennsylvania Family Institute going to do in response? And that is to encourage people to get involved and to pray and to vote. Perhaps I could just get two inside predictions out of you. Do you think Biden is going to make it to the election in terms of being the candidate?
I don't think he will, although as each day passes, it's increasingly thinking maybe he will. If you asked me a week and a half ago, I'd say he's going to be out. But he's a stubborn kind of guy. He's wanted to be president since the 1980s when he first ran, and is holding on to it, and his family's encouraging him to do it. And the system doesn't allow somebody to just sort of push him aside without his consent. And I don't think he's inclined to do that. So that's prediction number one. I kind of gave both sides, didn't I?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And prediction number two is when Ronald Reagan was shot, my understanding was that his ratings went up 22 points or around that amount. I've seen sort of some hints that with this attempt on former President Trump, that a lot of people have suddenly come out of the woodwork and are endorsing him. Elon Musk has endorsed him and others are endorsing him. It's almost given them the bravery to stand behind him. Do you think he's going to get a massive spike in popularity because of this?
I think he will, and I've seen those same sort of things. I saw that tweet from Elon Musk when he said, "I endorse President Trump," and others have done it. I've seen some people even on television who said, "I didn't vote for Trump in 16. I didn't vote for him in 20, but I would crawl across broken glass to vote for him now." And I think even for those sort of who were hesitant or felt some kind of social pressure not to do it, now this gives them sort of a reason to step forward and to say, look, if he can take this one for us, if he can stand up, despite this attack, maybe I can stand up as well. So I think there will be a bump. And prediction wise, it was looking positive for Trump, but we believe there was going to be what they called a red wave back in 2022 with a big sweep for the Republicans, the conservatives, and that did not happen. So there's a lot of time between now and November.
Yeah, and it seems like that the United States is just looking for some strong leadership. And yesterday, in despite the circumstances, there was this display of fight, strong leadership, and it's that will draw people to him, won't it? And away from someone who's struggling to deal with the effects of age. It seems a slam dunk from here, isn't it?
Well, it does if people are voting solely on that sort of thing. Again, there are people, and even what you see on social media in terms of those who hate Donald Trump. There have been some really nasty things said about, the shooter should have had better aim, or, was A for effort. One state
Shocking.
legislative staff member here in Pennsylvania actually tweeted that. The aide to a member of the Pennsylvania legislature. So there is that faction, but I do think, the heroic stance that the former president took, and the iconic images that we see coming out of that with his fist up and the American flag behind him will do that. And conversely, what we see with President Biden going to bed at 8 o'clock and barely able to, get up a flight of stairs to his airplane presents a massive contrast in terms of just leadership that's needed at this juncture in America.
Yeah. And just one more question. To me, for a shooter to be that close to the president and to get some shots away suggests that there's been a massive breakdown in intelligence. That's got to be the biggest story, isn't it?
It is the biggest story, and one, again, when I talked about the decline of trust in the institutions in our country, much of, for example, the person who is at the head of the Secret Service, a Biden appointee, used to work for the Pepsi-Cola company for security there, and now is in charge of protecting world leaders that come to the United States and the President of the United States. And she said her major initiative was to increase the number of women in the force of the Secret Service, so that, as they call it, diversity, equity, and inclusion has invaded our military, has invaded the Secret Service, et cetera. And there is no excuse, honestly, for that particular location, that rooftop, to have not been surveilled and protected, because the line of sight with just 148 yards, I think it was, to where the president was standing, that is just unconscionable and indicates a lack of planning, some would suggest, and it's already being suggested on social media that maybe that was done purposely. We'll have no way of knowing that, but those are the kinds of questions that the distrust of institutions does put in the minds of some Americans.
Michael, really appreciate your time. We'll let you get back to your Sunday night dinner. And I certainly encourage New Zealanders just to pray for the whole situation, for both President Biden and former President Trump, and just the temperature in the United States at the moment and what we're seeing from over here. And I look forward to catching up with you next week.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. And I just want to quickly mention that my daughter, Rebecca, 10 years ago, spent a semester at Dunedin. At the university there.
University, that's right. We got the connection.
So we have a love for New Zealand. Certainly she does. She jumped out of an airplane there and did all kinds of other crazy stuff and saw the beautiful countryside that is your country. So she has a love in her heart, and maybe I'll get there sometime to visit you.
Great. Thanks, Michael.
All right. God bless.